Learning is chus for Shlemo, Filan Chai Baserach, or a Nun Beis Amid Aleph, about 20 lines, 25 lines in the bottom. Boy Rev Nun. Risach Kli Lavoidus Gechavim. If they soldered a Kli, they had to weld it together. It was broken and they put it back together. So it's essentially creating it from scratch. Mao. What's the din? Avodas, the Gemara says, what kind? It's a very open-ended question. What's the din? Avodas kechavim the man. Who's avodas zara we talking about? Ilay avodas kechavim David kechavim. If it's a guy's avodas zara, bein lo Yishmael or Rekiva, misham she'avodas kechavim hein, misham she'avodas kechavim ein asur not she'avodah. We had learned this. We had brought the brisa, but with the machlekes or Elazar and Rabbi Yishmael. But before they had the machlekes, the first thing that it said in the brisa was that misham she'avodas kechavim, meaning kalim of avodas kechavim, are only asur when they are actually worshipped, not when they're created. So what would be the question? This should also be when you weld it together, you're creating in the first place. It's not going to become asur until someone worships it. Avodas kechavim the Yisrael. Elamai, we're talking about where this kli is avodas chavam of Yisrael. Aliba deman. Ilema aliba kiva hashti he gufalei mitzra. So the machlekes in the brisa was between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Kiva was on an ovid kechavim itself. So we brought all the psukim, we had the machlekes. So according to Rabbi Kiva said the avodah zara of an ovid kechavim only becomes asur when it's worshipped. So zok the Gemara, Rabbi Kiva hashti he guvalei mitzra cheteavin misham shemi boy. Certainly the kli is not going to become asur until you're ovid it. Vel libed Rabbi Yishmael damasur miyad. He says an avodah zara becomes asur immediately. So that's our question. My misham shem gamrinan. Do we learn out the mishamshin from the mishamshin of a from that of a? So we're talking about it belongs to a yid. My misham gamina and ma hasam ad sheyavodu avhacha ad sheyavodu. Do we say just like the Torah says the Gabi guy's kli, that they're not usher, like we said in the first part of the brisa, that they're not usher until you over it. I don't mean no gama. Mahi asur miyad, avim shamsha asur miyad. Do we say just like the avodah zara is usher right away? This is also usher right away. So this is in Rabbi Yishmael. We have a makom to have this question. In fact, the Gemara, if that's the case, if the question is that we're talking about where he created a avodah zara, where Yid made a kli, he fixed the kli of a avodah zara, and the question is, do we compare it to the kli of a non-Jew, or do we compare it to the avodah zara of a Yid? My Yid can boile risach kli to boile also. Why did you start up with fixing an old kli? Just talking about the regular, he made a kli. Why are you making it more complicated? So he said the question was an entirely different question, even though it sounds like risach kli. What was it? Risach kli lavodas kechavim. It's not a question that has to do with when it becomes awesome. He's talking about the tumah that was in the kli before it broke, and now you're fixing it. That means, well, first there's a general rule gabi tumah, that if one has a kli that's tumah, tumas mace, a kli matras that breaks, the tumah goes away, because the shame kli goes away. Something that's not a kli cannot become tumah. If you have a nugget of silver, and it becomes exposed to a mace, it doesn't become tummy because it's not a kli. So this thing became ice kli, it became ice tummy. But if you then go fix it, it regains its tumah. That's takanas chachamim, that it regains its tumah. Now we have seen before that avodah zara brings along with it a tumah, the tumah derabanan. So the question is that tumah derabanan, what's its status, Gabi, when you have a returning tumah to a fixed, a repaired metal kli? The Tanakh, kli matris pshutein mekablein, metal kli, whether it's a flat kli or a kli that has a base kibble that can uh, hold something, they're both tummy, just means as opposed to an earthenware kli, which is only tummy if it has a base kibble. A flat piece of earthenware doesn't become tummy. Nishtabru, if it broke, tar, like we said, but this kli matris, if it breaks, it becomes tar because it's no longer kli. Chazav asan kalim. If he goes and makes it a kli again, what is that? Aleph again. Asan kalim. Chazru l'tumah. Chazru yitun shein. It goes back to its old tumah. V'hachi kamibale. Ki hadra tumah hanimilu tumah deraisa. Is that din that we say that when you fix a kli that was tameh, that it goes back to its original tumah? Is that only tumas meis, which is a tumah deraisa? Avol tumah derabanan loy, but the tumah of a avodah zara that the chachamim placed on an avodah zara, even though we learned it out from a pasuk before of zivchei mesim, that's only nasmachta. Rashi keeps banging on about how it's only derabanan, and this is the reason why, because of this gemara. So this is it only derabanan? Therefore, it won't. Now maybe it makes no difference. All tumas go back after the kli is repaired. In fact, the Gemara of Rabbanan. Why are we picking on specifically the tumah derabanan of something that became tamei because it's because it's avodah zara? Why can't we talk about stam any other tumah derabanan? There's many tumas that are imposed midirabanan. So the Gemara. We're asking a sequential question. Tumah derabanan mihadra hadra. First of all, does the general tumah derabanan come back? Imtim salaim hadra. And if you'll say that generally we only say this din of returning tumah when you fix a kli by a deraisa, not derabanan, tumah davez kichav mishum chum davez kichav mishav rabbanan ketumah deraisa. Do we say that avodah zara is muchamer? And it's an exception to the rule that other tumas derabanan it doesn't come back, but maybe because of the chumrah of avodah zara, the chumrah geyser that it should come back. Teiku. We leave that as a teiku. If one has something that was brought as a sacrifice, as an offering to a avodah zara, and it's food. He has a loaf of bread that was offered to an avodah zara. Do we say that if the person that we said that a guy can be mevatel tumah, he can be mevatel it from being avodah zara and therefore no longer asa b'hana? Will that also take off the tumah that came on it once we started talking about the tumah that comes from avodah zara? Does the bittul also take off the tumah that was imposed on this loaf of bread? Eloi. In fact, why are we talking about bedavka eichlim? Why can't we talk about a kli? Kli also gets a din tumah. Why don't we question whether the tumah goes off when you mevatel the din, when you mevatel the din avodah zara from it? Maybe the tumah goes off then also or not. So the kelim like keeping the islu tire b'mikvah. Since there's another way to be mitayr a kli, you can put it in a mikvah and it will lose its tumah. So its tumah is not a permanent tumah. Tumah nani batla. So when you mevatel the avodah zara, the tumah also goes off. Since it's not such a sticky tumah, it can be tumah from a kli can go away by being taivel in a mikvah. So this also is going to be able to get rid of the tumah. Kikam mibayle oichlin. But our question is an oichlin which don't have the capacity to be tovel in the mikvah. Generally, when something becomes tameh, it's tameh forever. Is this an exception But we say since you were mavatal the din avodah zara from this eichel, does it also lose its din of tumah? Why are we asking bedavka on takreves avid kechavim? Why don't we ask about the art where he worshipped a loaf of bread? Does that when you're mavatal the din avodah zara, does it also lose its din tumah? Like there, no. That would not be a question. Even the surah bottle, tumah may not be betela. Since, as we said, takreves avid kechavim has unique din that it has to be put away forever. There's no possibility of bittul even by a avid kechavim. So that's what we have the question. But on the an avodah zara, it's a little bit it's strange to I mean it's what do you call it? It's counterintuitive. But an avodah zara is not as strict as takreves avodah kechavim as far as the din bittul. So since there is a possibility of bittul by the isser can be bottle, so the tummy also bottle. Since it's isser, it can become mutter bahana. So therefore, the tummy also can be bottle. He can violate a krepes levitzke chavim shel oichem mai. Even the surah le bottle to the gidol, like we said we quoted from gidol at takreves. Even if you mevatel it, it doesn't lose its isser. Tumah nami le bottle. So when you mevatel it, nothing happens to the tumah. Idilma is it deraisa le bottle. Tumah derabanan bottle. Maybe the bittul helps legabi the tumah. That was the question. Take again. We're left with the teiku. Bo'amine Rabbi Yosef ben Shalom Rabbi Kalim sheshimshu bahen bebeis Chanyai. Kalim that we used in the house of Chanyai. This was Chanyai was a failed Kohen Gadol who, out of resentment, ran off to Mitzrayim and built himself a bama there. And it was also to bring on a bama. It's a machlekes whether he was Oived Avodah Zara on this bama or he just brought karbanos chutz lemishkan, chutz from the Beis Hamikdash, and that was what he did wrong. But it's certainly wrong to bring whatever it was he did. So now the Gemara is going to say we're talking over here according to the Manda Amar that it was just he was being Oived chutz of the Beis Hamikdash. So kalim that we used in this Beis Chanyai, ma'ushi ishtamshu in the Beis Hamikdash. What's the din to use them in the Beis Hamikdash? For kami b'alei b'dman dama Beis Chanyai la Beis Avodas Kechavim. This is only according to Manda Amar that it wasn't the Beis Avodas Kechavim that we have this question. The Tanan kehanim sheshimshu Beis Chanyai lo yishamshu b'mikdash b'Yerushalayim. The kehanim that were mishtamish, we did the avoda in this Beis Chanyai, were not allowed to be mishtamish in the Beis Hamikdash. And it's not necessary to say, had they been Oived Avodah Zara, that they would be precluded from ever doing Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. So Zatumar Kahanim do consider Rabbana Mishum de Boy de Bnei Dayanin. Do we say that this is only Kehanim, that since they've taken upon themselves to do something they were not allowed to do, to bring Karbanis outside of the Beis HaMikdash, so the Chavim, they were punished. They made a knas on them that they can no longer do the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash because we want to teach them a lesson. Nobody should do such a thing. Aval kalim loy, but kalim are inanimate objects. They can't learn a lesson, so there's no reason to punish them. So therefore, they could do, even though they were used in the Beis Chanyai, they could still be used in the Beis Hamikdash. No, or maybe just like we want to punish the Kehanim so that they shouldn't do such a thing, we want to punish the owners of the kalim, that they'll not have their kalim be used outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Amalei, so he answered him back. So that was the question Rabbi Yosef ben Shaul asked Rabbi, and Rabbi answered him back, they're awesome. I had a pasuk and a smachtas to support why it's also, but I forgot which pasuk it is. So, Esvei. So Rabbi Yosef ben Shaul asked him a question. You're saying that these kalim that we use in Beis Chanya are now also to use in the Beis Hamikdash, in spite of the fact that they're inanimate objects. I'll prove to you that that's not true. All those kalim that the Melech Achaz used incorrectly, but ma'alai, when he was ma, when he rebelled against the Rebbeinu Shalom. So these kalim were used for avodah zara. Heichanu, they prepared them. Vehikdashnu, and they were makdashem to use again in the Beis Hamikdash. My love, halchnu da'at v'linu, doesn't the fact that they prepared them means that they were mvatal them hikdashnu da'akdashinu, and they were makdash them, reconsecrated them for use. That means in addition to them being also bahana because of being used as kalim for avodah zara, you also have to then be makdish them once again so that they can be used again for the Beis Hamikdash. But you see over here that the Chachamim allowed it to be bottled and reused. So the Chayra, this is even though these are kalim. So you see the Chachamim did not object to making something be. He said he had to be. I'm sorry, I said at Belinu. It was not bottle. I read incorrectly. At Belinu is he titled it to get rid of the tumah. So you see that you can get rid of the tumah of a kli, even that the chamu are not misaken, that it's unable to become kosher from its tumah. Amalei baruch atal shamayim shechzatali avidas. He says you're misunderstanding what that pasuk teaches. I learned the exact opposite lesson from the pasuk. You just touched the pasuk wrong. Hechanu, when it says they prepared, doesn't mean that they would toivel it from its tumah. Hechanu means she ganzanu, that they put it into gniza. They taka became tamei for forever because of the sakonas chachamim. Once it was used for avodah zara, and then they had to be makdish others in its place. So that's a raya fakert that I'm right that they become asur lo'il. Lem Mesayele will bring a raya to this. Mizrachas Safinus there was a place in the northeast of the Beis Hamikdash. Bal Gonzu Beis Chashmonoyes Avnei HaMizbeach. That's where the Beis Chashmonoi hid the stones of the Mizbeach. Sheshaksu Anshe Yavan. That the Yavanim, unfortunately, b'shas that they destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. They used the Beis Hamikdash for the Avodah Zara. So therefore, the Chacham buried the stones of the Mizbeach. Amr Sheish Shaksu Avodah Chacham. He says, what is it? Shaksu was used for Avodah Chacham. Amr Papa Hasam Kra Ashkach V'Darsh. So you see, in any case, you see that they had to put it away permanently. So you see the Chacham were misaken that the tumah can't be bottled. Amr Papa Hasam Kra Ashkach V'Darsh. The Chsevu Bo Bo Pritzim B'Chalua. The Pritzim, meaning the Yevanim, came and they were Mechalit. Amri Hechi Nabed. What should we do with it? Nitverinu, how are we going to be Mavatal it? In order to be Mavatal, as we're going to see in the next Mishnah, you have to do some physical reduction of the Avodah Zara. How are we going to reduce the Avnei Mizbeach? If we break it up, Avanim Shleimus Amrachmana. They have to be full, meaning it has to be rocks, it has to be stones that have no flaws in it. It has to be smooth. And if you break it up, it's obviously not going to be smooth. Ninsarinu, and if you'll say, okay, so we'll smooth it down. Like Tanif Aleim Barzel Amrachman. The Torah says you can't place you can't use any metal kalim on the stones of the Mizbeach. So if you were to use Barzel to smooth it over, to make it kosher again, it would become possible because of the Kli. V'amai, it's affecting Gemara. Why can't they just break it up and keep it for themselves? You know, they wanted to. The Chachamim had intentions to asser all the silver and gold that Yidden would be asser to use any silver and gold because of the silver and the gold of Yerushalayim that was taken by the Romans. That was really hektish, and then used for mundane uses. And we're not allowed to make use of it. Why would you have to be chayshish that any silver and gold you find is from Yerushalayim? They wanted to ask only a specific type of silver and gold coins from that era, from Turnus Rufus and Hadrina, that was at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, that they had lost their uh, their coinage, that you couldn't see the figures on it, so you couldn't determine where it was from. And they Tiva Shal Yerushalayim, because maybe it was from those that were in Yerushalayim. There were many of them, maybe at that point, it was Roiv of them was in Yerushalayim, were taken for Hekdesh. Um, until they found a pasuk which allowed it. It says Ubo Pritzim v'Chalalua. So that told us that they were mechalit, so it no longer had the hektish on it. So if that's the case, that we see that these coins, the Chama ultimately decided that these coins were mutter, because when they were mechalit, meaning they took the hektish, it became ois hektish, and it became mutter for people to use. Why don't we say the same thing with Avnei Mizbeach? When they came into the Beis Hamikdash and mechal the Mizbeach, saying no, it lost its kedusha, and therefore it could just be used for anything. So Gemara, no, it's not a dimyan. Over there was a coins that belonged to Hekdesh, and then the attacker had a din Hekdesh, but the Chacham were not misaken on it because it wasn't used for karbanis. It was going to be sold. It was going to be used to buy karbanis, but it didn't have the same kedushas haguf. Since it was part of the mizbech, this, even with the chilul, it doesn't. The Chachamim did not allow it to be used for regular purposes, and that's why there was no choice there was no way to redeem it. It was stuck, and it had to be ganas. Zok the mission. And a guy can be mevatel his own avodas kechavim and that of his friends, like we said numerous times. Only a guy can be mevatel his avodah zara, and he could even be mevatel that of his friends. The Yisrael mevatel avodas kechavim shel avodas kechavim. A Yisrael cannot be mevatel even the avodah zara of an avodah kechavim. A yid does not have the ability to be mevatel. When the Torah said that the avodah zara of a yid cannot be batel, that includes that a yid can't even be mevatel that of a guy. Mevatel avodas kechavim, mevatel mishamsheh. When a person is mevatel avodas kechavim, he's also mevatel that which is mishamashit. If it has decorations on it, for example, those become batel along with the avodah zara. Bitel mishamsheh, mishamsheh mutar v'hi asur. But if you're mevatel the din avodah zara, if let's say there's the avodah zara has a gold pedestal, and Yemavatal, the guy says, he takes a hammer and cuts off a piece of the pedestal, and he says, I don't want it to be avodah zara anymore. The pedestal is no longer avodah zara, but the avodah zara itself remains. Masnile Rebbe Rav Shimon, Rebbe asked Rav Shimon Rebbe, Ovid kechav mevatel avodah kechavim shaloi v'shel chaveri. He taught him that Ovid kechavim ki mevatel his avodah kechavim and that of his chava, which is the same thing that we said at the beginning of our Mishnah. But the mashmais of this is that a yid cannot be mevatel. Amalei, but not that. I'm sorry, he can't be mevatel that of a yid. Amalei, Rabbi Shanisa Rabbi Yadusa, Ovid kechavim mevatel avodah kechavim shaloi v'shel Yisrael. You had previously taught me, not like what we said in the Mishnah, and not like this memory that you just said now, that an Ovid kechavim can be mevatel the avodah zara of the yid. So the Gemara, the Yisrael become mevatla b'asham b'seiseksiv. The pasuk that says that they have to take any avodah zara of a yid and put it into gniza because it can never be batel. So how can we say now that an Ovid kechavim can be mevatel? Amar fil breder the Rabbi Vilas loy nitzrucha sheyesh lo ba shutfes shalash. We're talking about where it's not exclusively of a yid. It was avodah zara that there was a shutfes between a yid and a guy, and that's what Rabbi originally said. B'yaldusa that a guy can be mevatel the Avodah Zarah that was owned b'shutfus with the Yid. Bialdusa Maikasav is a Knusa Maikasav. But then later on, obviously, Rebbe said that a guy can only be Mavatal his own, meaning not even, he can't even be Mavatal from a Shutva. So what changed his mind to say that he can't be Mavatal anymore? Bialdusa Sav Yisrael Adai to David Kechavim Palach. Kivin David Kechavim Mavatal, the Nafshedi, Yisrael Nami Mavatal. He holds that when a Yid is involved in has a Shutva in an Avodah Zarah with a guy, his Pintel Yid is telling him, you really shouldn't have an Avodah Zara, but he's doing it to get along with the guy. He wants to do other business with him, so he gets an Avodah Zara, but he's only doing it to go along with the guy. So when the guy is not being Oived it, the Yid is also not being Oived it. In the end, he says, no, a Yid, when he's Oived Avodah Zara, does it fully. He's when the Ovid Kechav is Mevatel, he's only Mevatel his own part, but he's not being Mevatel that part that belongs to the Yid. Some say this memra of whatever his name is, Hillel Breder Avalis, was said not on the first part of the Mishnah. We said that Ovid Kechavim is Mevatel his and that of his Chaver. It's going on the next part. Yisrael ain't mevatel avodas kechavim shel avodas kechavim. We said Yisrael cannot be mevatel avodas kechavim avodas kechavim. Like the Gemara Pshita, l'chayra that's pashut. What do we have to tell us? We learned it from a pasuk earlier that a yid can't do such a thing. That a yid has no capability of being mevatel avodas kechavim. Amr of Hillel, Breder Avalas, loy nitzrecha al sheyesh le b'shutfis. No, when it's saying that a yid can't be mevatel the Avodah Zara of a guy, it means where he has a shutfis together with the guy in the Avodah Zara. Kamashma Yisrael hu delay mevatel David Kechavim. Avodah Kechavim the nafshe mevatel. It's coming to tell you that although the Yid is not mevatel, he can't be mevatel his part, but we don't say that the Avodah Kechavim is precluded because the whole thing is brought b'shutfis, is owned b'shutfis with the Yid, and therefore the din that a Yid cannot be mevatel his Avodah Zarah takes over. No, the Avodah Zarah of the guy's part is his part, and the Yid's part is his part, and the guy can be mevatel his own thing. Iked demasel abrayis, and there's a third way of learning this din of Hillel ben Valas that he said b'shem Rav Valas. He said on a different price. Rishim ben Menashe Omer, Avodah Kechavim shel Yisrael ein la b'teila oilamis. Avodah Kechavim Yid can never become batel. My oilamis. What does it mean? Oilamis can never be batel. What is the chiddush of that? We know the din that Yisrael cannot be mevatel when he makes an avodas kechavim, it has to go to gniza. So what is a lamis more than legniza? So it's coming to tell you this din that if he owns it b'shutfis, kamashal Yisrael adaita the nafshe palach that the yid is being is worshiping. He's being oived on its own. Only on his own part. So even though the Ovid Kechavim has the ability to mevatel, it's not going to work. Like we said in the first pshat, that it's telling you that he can't be mevatel. The guy can't be mevatel the yid's portion. It's not dependent on the guy's. He's not putting himself subject to the wishes of the Ovid Kechavim. We have to go. Let's go another couple of minutes. Ketzad mevatla. How are you mevatel an ovid kechav? How is it when in the cases where you can do when an ovid kechav can mevatel is avodah zara? How does he do so? Kata roishas. Now he cuts off the tip of its ear. Roish chaytuma, the tip of its nose. Roish etzbasa, the tip of the avodah zara's finger. Pichsa. He bangs it. Even though he hasn't taken away anything from it, that's enough of a physical manifestation that his bittul works. Bitla, it's all these are going to be bought. Rock b'faneh, if he spit in the face of the avodah zara, hishtim b'faneh, if he relieved himself on it, gira, he dragged it in the dust, zarak bas, atzaye, threw tzay on it, harizu eina betela. All these things are not mevatel, because all these things are momentary expressions of anger, but he's not doing anything physical. That's why we said in all the previous ones that he did something irrevocable, where he made a damage to it. But these things are just getting angry, but the next minute he's going to change his mind, like the Gemara will explain. Machroi Mishkana, if he sold it or used it as a mashkan, Rabbi Yom Bittel, v'cham Yom Bittel. Rabbi says it's batal, Chum say it's not. So I think about Kila Chisr b'may bitla. In the last case where he said that he banged Avoda Zara, it becomes batal. If he didn't diminish it, how does it become batal? Amar Zera shepachsa b'fanea, where he smashed its face, so it no longer has a face, so that's enough of a physical damage that it's not batal, that it becomes batal. Rokik b'fanea, if he spit on it, v'hishtim b'fanea, mino animili, where do we know that those things are not going to be batal? Amar chizki damakra, like when a guy will become hungry, Biskatzef, and he'll get angry at his Avodah Zarah, but kill b'malcha. He's going to curse his melech, his Avodah Zarah, ubelehav, and in his gods, upana l'mayla, and he's going to turn to Hashem. Uksiv basrei. Then it says after eretz yabet, but then later on he's going to turn back to the earth. He's going to turn away from l'mayla to Hashem, and he's going to go back to his Avodah Zarah. So when he has a need, he goes to Hashem, but then later on he goes back to his comfortable Avodah Zarah. And then it's going to be bad and it's going to be dark for him because he's going to go back to Avodah Zarah. The Avagav the killer Malkav Elihavu Panel Maila Leretz Yabet. In the end, he's going to return to his Avodah Zarah. Okay, I think we'll stop over here and we'll continue B'ez Hashem tomorrow.
All right, thank you.